Hello YouTube, Jonathan here, and for this video and subsequent series we are going to get a blast from the past. So what I have right here is the original Axis and Allies Europe. This is a fairly old game. In fact, after Classic, this was the very next game to be created. So a lot of the rules kind of harken back to those older versions, and the prices of things are also different. I'll zoom in over here. So you'll see tanks still cost at 5, bombers cost a whopping 15, carriers are 18, fighters are 12, amongst other things. This was also the first version to introduce destroyers and artillery, so there are no cruisers in this game. Transports also defend at 1. That's still going on. So this game consists of Germany, then the Soviet Union, then England, and then the United States. Those are the different powers. In addition to those things that I commented on, you also have the oil-rich Middle East, which is shown in a slightly different color, and we've got some allies, mostly Great Britain, but the Soviets are up there. And that is handled a little bit differently. In fact, it says on the map, I'll zoom in here a little bit, basically what happens if the Axis, which would be Germany in this case, take over some of these territories, they total 8 production total. I'm sorry, it's 8 production total, I believe. Let me see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, or 7. Oh, Egypt counts as 1, that's right, as I knock everything over here. 8 production total, and it is not controlled by anyone. In a sense, it isn't controlled by anybody. The way it works is if the Axis take over some of this production, then the Allies between them have to give Germany, or the Axis, that number of IPCs. Now, it could be split amongst all the Allies. It could come just from one of them, say the United States. However they want to do it is fine, but basically the Allies have to pay that money over to Germany. The strait here by Turkey is closed to all powers. There is no way to unlock that. You cannot invade Turkey in this game. There are also a series of convoys over here that Germany might consider going after, or the Allies might have to go after to get them back. Germany does not gain production by taking out those convoys, but it does deprive the Allies of those convoys. America has a couple. Most of them are England's, and then the Soviet Union has one up there, and the fall of Archangel negates that convoy as well. In addition, in this game, before the start, both sides get a total of 12 production that they can use. They can either put down 12 productions worth of units into territory where at the start of the game they have units, or they can hang on to it and it goes in their bank. So it's kind of like bidding, but both sides get it, and if you want to hang on to the money, you can. Unlike most bidding, where you have to spend it or lose it. Now, that is a lot to take in. I'm sure I'm forgetting something. Oh, one thing that I also want to mention before we get into strategy, the Allies have a huge economic advantage in this game. So Germany has 40 IPCs, and it has 3 enemies. One of those enemies, the United States, way over here, it doesn't start with much, but one of those enemies also has 40 IPCs. So if you want to call that even, then Germany also has to worry about England, which has 30 IPCs, and Russia, which has another 24. So the Allies combined have more than double Germany's production. On the other hand, if you've ever wanted to feel in an Axis and Allies game like a kid in a candy store, play as Germany in Axis and Allies Europe, the original. The only other game that I'm familiar that kind of gives that feeling is playing Japan on the first turn in the original Axis and Allies Pacific. Germany is just armed to the teeth here, and it's going to need to use that to its advantage, because if you get multiple turns in, the Allies' economic advantage is I mean, that's huge. They have a huge advantage there. And so if Germany can't take out a capital, say take Moscow, or gobble up a bunch of production to even the odds, then they're going to be in a lot of trouble. They're just gradually going to get whittled down. Fortunately, Germany gets to go first, so it doesn't have to play defensive. Also, the United States is automatically in the war. This is not like Global 40, where the United States has to stay out until a certain number turns in. So we're going to be looking at German strategy, and we're just kind of going to go across the map here. We have a ton of subs over here. There are a bunch of convoys. There's also some navy for us to take out. So what we're going to do, wherever possible, we're going to hit a convoy, and to our advantage, to take out a convoy, you don't have to move a ship there and then sit. You just have to move through it. You have to have a unit that has attack value, but you don't have to move in and stop. You could, let's say, for example, up here, you could take this sub and go 1, 2, and you would be disrupting that convoy, and you'd put a control marker there basically to signify that. So what we would do is we're going to take our subs, and we're in a position where if we do this right, we can hit this destroyer with 2 subs. Now, one other thing that I forgot to mention is that since cruisers don't exist, destroyers actually attack and defend at 3. So in that regard, we would need to treat them as cruisers for the purposes of odds and how much we want to send into a battle. They just attack and defend at 3. So we can send 2 subs here. That should give us an advantage. We can send 2 subs up here. We can send 2 subs up here. We can, let's see, I believe we can get 2 subs over here, and we can get 1 sub here and 1 sub here. Now we also have tons of fighters. Let's see, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 fighters, and we've got a bomber. So we can send them into the fray. We can clear out the entire British Navy, more than likely, and we can take out this little American Navy over here, destroyer and transport, and we can disrupt a couple of convoys while we do it. So that shouldn't be an issue. Down here in the Mediterranean, there's nothing in Libya, so we're basically going to move these guys forward. This fleet here, there are no naval bases, so the farthest we can go is 2 spaces. We can move them here, maybe drop off another couple guys, and then make a push over towards Egypt. That fleet is going to be strong enough. We should be okay, even if the British move in this fleet and send in that fighter. And then we are going to slowly move across here using our navy to destroy their whatever fleet they have, picking up a couple guys from Greece, maybe on turn 2, and just continuing our march forward over this way. That's going to be our plan. Up here, we are going to prepare on the first turn, we're going to prepare to go after the Soviet Union. So that's going to mean buying a bunch of tanks on our first turn, probably 8 tanks. Oh, and before we get there, the 12 IPCs that we start with, I'm going to recommend a tank, because they only cost 5 in this game, and a tank and an infantry and an artillery is going to give us 12, and we're going to put them somewhere along this front. The infantry and artillery probably down here in Romania, and the tank we will probably want to put over in Hungary here, and I'll explain why as we start talking about troop movements, land troop movements. So the Russians don't have any offense up front for us to take out except this tank here. Otherwise, it's a wall of infantry. We don't really want to attack against a wall of infantry, but we do want to try and take out this tank. We have, oh gosh, how many tanks do we have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I count at least 10 tanks here. The Soviets have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 tanks, I believe, over there. Roughly, give or take, a tank. And so we are going to want to move a couple guys in here, maybe an infantry and an artillery and a fighter or something like that. Maybe 2 infantry and artillery and a fighter to try and wipe this out. That's all we want to do on the first turn. Everything else is going to be about positioning. Remember, all of our planes, except maybe one that we sent over here, are going to be wrapped up taking out the British Navy. And then we want to position them so that on turn 2, along with our land forces, we can start sweeping this way. In preparation for our turn 2, we're going to move all of our infantry forward that can get there. So Bulgaria, Yugoslavia, Hungary infantry are all going to go here, making a giant infantry force. We're going to move Czechoslovakia and Germany over here to Poland, so we have a big infantry force there. And we're going to put as many tanks as we can get over here in Hungary. There are a few tanks over here, these tanks and these tanks, that can't make it. We'll just move them in Germany, and of course all the tanks that we buy are going to go into Germany. Now the reason we want to pool our tanks into Hungary is because we are keeping the Soviets off balance. The Soviets at this point don't know where we're going to attack. We could move our tanks 2 spaces to hit Baltic, we could go into East Poland, we could go into Bessarabia if they want to counterattack, we could go into Ukraine. Basically every single border territory, aside from ones we need transports to get to up here, is hittable from Hungary with our tanks. And so we are going to do that so that on turn 2 we can either pool all of our tanks with one of our stacks of infantry and move forward, or we will split up our tanks and do a 2-pronged assault. If the Soviets really start fortifying either the north or the south, we can pool our units together and go where they're weak, and we're going to make a beeline for Moscow. We could go, let's say we're going north, we could go Baltic, Leningrad, Russia, Moscow, or if the situation calls for it, we could go Baltic, Belarus, Moscow, and be in Moscow in 3 turns. Now, if Russia splits their forces, we could consider splitting ours as well. And here's how we might do that. We'd send a stack of infantry and some tanks up to Baltic with the idea that we're either going to go after Leningrad or we're going to go here if Leningrad is too strong. And our second force is going to go into Ukraine. Now, the Ukraine force puts pressure on Stalingrad. We could go there, or we can go to Belarus. The Soviets have factories in both Leningrad and Stalingrad, so our 2-pronged assault immediately puts pressure on both of them. If they can't adequately defend them both, then we will take both. If they defend one, then we will take the other one. And we're also in a position where, if for some reason that doesn't look favorable, we can consolidate both forces into Belarus here, and we can still hit Moscow on the next turn. So those guys would go here, and these guys would go here. We can still hit Leningrad or Stalingrad if we want to. We can also hit Moscow if we want to. Now, another alternative for our force here, if things are looking pretty well in hand, we could send a small contingent down this way to help assist this situation. If Russia is looking a little bit spotty or a little bit difficult, we would not want to divert forces away. This is worth a production, it's nice, but taking out one of the allies and getting their money and eliminating this threat is much more important. So you'd only want to divert forces this way if this looks like you're pretty much in control of the situation. On the third turn, so the second turn you're going to attack, you're going to hit all of these things. On the second turn, you could build some more tanks, and then on the third turn, just focus on infantry and defending this. You don't have an Italy to help with can openers or to help with your defense over here. So you do need to pay close attention to what's happening on this side and use whatever subs you have on your second turn to your advantage. And if you don't need the fighters over here, like if Russia leaves one guy on the border of all their territories, you're not going to need fighters. You're going to have overwhelming force to take whatever you want. And in that case, you could send some of your fighters over this way to help deal with the British along with your remaining subs, so that you don't need to worry about infantry over here for a little bit longer. So a lot of things to do. it would be very easy to inadvertently miss things because you just have so many units and there's so much you can accomplish, but you really need to accomplish as much as possible on your, especially on your second turn. That's when you really want to hit Russia hard. And one thing that I did not mention, it's kind of a minor point, but you can also move these guys over here. You shouldn't have to worry about the British attacking Norway on their first turn, and depending on how things go, you might be okay on even on the second turn. And you've got some more infantry here. You can move them forward and put more pressure on Leningrad potentially on your second turn. I'm sorry, you would move in on your second turn, and really it'd be the third turn that they'd be in a position to hit Leningrad. You do have this transport here that I did not talk about. Because it can be used as fodder, you could move it into one of these battles, probably this one, because there is an enemy battleship and they are double hit in this version. But if for some reason you wanted to move it over here and do something, or try and just move it to safety, well, actually the British bomber could hit it no matter what. So you could move it in the hopes that maybe they'll send a bomber after it and you'll shoot it down, but that's an attacking 4 against your 1. Chances are not very good. I would probably use it as fodder up here to deal with, to help keep more of your subs alive. So that is quite a bit. There's a ton to do, but like I said, it's like a kid in a candy store. You have so much stuff and there's so much you can accomplish. On the first turn is basically you are preparing, you're getting everything in position, you're dealing with the British and the American Navy, and putting yourself in a position where you can hit the Soviets hard on your second turn while taking out one of their offensive units. They'll have a difficult time replacing with their limited economy, or at least more difficulty than you will have. And then on turn 2, you're just going to let loose your armies and force your way into Russia and just start clobbering them and taking cities where possible, where it makes sense. Always making sure that your eye is on Moscow. You want to take enemy factories. You don't want to ignore them, but if they are going to be extremely difficult, if you're going to take a bunch of casualties, that is ultimately going to weaken your approach to Moscow more than having that factory and being able to put 2 units here or here would help it. You can bypass it. You can either have 1 prong or you can have a 2-pronged assault, and you can position them if they're north and south, that they can consolidate at a moment's notice if necessary. And that is how I would recommend playing as Germany in this game. I know that an Operation Sea Lion is possible. In fact, I have seen it done. The British player would have to not be paying very close attention, but sometimes it is possible through what Germany does, or through kind of psychological warfare, so to speak, to catch them not really paying attention. And there is a way to take England if you are successful in that, but I wouldn't count on that working more than once against the same player. And I wouldn't recommend that as a primary strategy either. This version is, in my opinion, all about Operation Barbarossa. The other things are they're important, but they're kind of secondary. This is all about Germany and the Soviet Union going at it. And assuming the Allies aren't at Berlin's doorstep when Germany takes Moscow, then the Axis has won this game, in my opinion. I mean, a lot of things could happen, but that's roughly 24, I think it's 24 production the Soviets have, so that is 64 for Germany, plus they're going to get another 8 from the Middle East, so that's 72 production. That is more production than England and the United States. So unless they are about to take Berlin, now Germany outproduces, and there's 2 allies, so their production is split 2 ways, whereas Germany, it's all concentrated in 1. Germany is going to be just fine in that situation. So I hope you guys enjoyed this blast from the past here. I will make a couple more videos about the other countries, Soviet Union, England, and United States. And we'll just talk about some options there and what those countries might do given the situation with Germany here with its massive army and navy.